Hey YouTubers, I'm Jacob, and this is a how-to video for installing a Rebel Wire wiring harness in my 79 Bronco. This is their American Muscle 21 circuit harness, and I want to give a shout out to Rebel Wire. Thank you for sponsoring me on this project. This is going to be a great upgrade for our Bronco with all American-made parts assembled right here in the USA. Broken this down into a multi-part series, so definitely smash on that subscribe button to follow along on this multi-part series.
The first thing I want to do is disconnect and remove the battery. Do that first thing, that way you don't shock yourself in removing some of this existing electrical. I'm also going to go ahead and take this hood off and just kind of clear out the space so that it'll make it easier for me to work in there.
I'm bagging and labeling all of the hardware as I remove it. I'm using blue painter's tape, plastic bags, and a Sharpie to stay organized. I'm storing all of this in a box in the back of the Bronco.
Working on getting everything on the dash taken apart so that I can start pulling out all the electrical. And I need to be careful because I've already got my Vintage Air AC kit installed, so I'm going to remove the flex duct that's in here to give myself more room. I'm also going to remove the steering wheel, and this should just allow me to be able to run wires more easily and not have to work around the steering wheel. Then remove the instrument cluster, and I should, after that, have enough room to be able to start pulling the wiring out. Once I do that, I'm going to start documenting all of the connections and routing of the existing electrical. That way I just can note that and reference it in the future when routing the new wires. I may come up with some better routing options. I want to make this look clean. I'm not going to try and hide all the wires, but I definitely want to make it look like it came rolling out of the factory like this. Now, this has a new engine in it, so I'm sure it's had some rewiring in the past, and there's been some questionable electrical moves on this that I've found, so I definitely have to be careful on what I find, but I need to document all these connections, locations, and types. This is why you want to keep track of stuff and label them, because like the harness I have doesn't have a switch for the rear window. So this is something I might want to cut out and keep, or just buy a new one. But you definitely want to keep track of stuff like this.
After disconnecting everything, I'm pushing the harness back through the cab wall and disconnecting the fuse block so I can pull the harness out all in one piece. When removing the old harness, make sure to keep any new wiring in the vehicle. For example, my steering column harness, Vintage Air kit, and wiper harness. Label all major connectors that will need to be reused, and do not throw away the harness once you remove it. You'll need to reference it when installing the new one.
Now that I have the old harness removed, everything cleaned up, I've reorganized the harness. I've got 3 different grommets here. 2 of them I'm going to be using for this project. So one on driver's side and one a little more passenger side. Gone ahead and taken apart the harness and split it up to which areas of the engine I want to feed those wires. And now that I've completed that, it's time to finally mount the fuse box. And I'm going to be mounting it pretty much in the same spot as the original. You just want to make sure that the wires aren't going to interfere with anything coming out of the fuse box, and that you can actually wrap your wires and get them to where you want. So I'm gonna go ahead and get this mounted up, and then it'll finally be time to start pulling wire.
I didn't like making a bunch of penetrations in the firewall. Since I planned to mount bus bars and other things, I decided to mount the fuse block and everything else to 3/4 inch thick HDPE. I made a template with cardboard and then cut it out on a jigsaw. I then sealed all of the old penetrations with high temp RTV.
Okay, so now that I have the fuse block mounted on the firewall, I've got all of my cable runs organized in the grommets and directions I want to run them in. It's now finally to start pulling cable through the firewall. These are labeled, and the ones that are going to go forward out of the firewall are the ones with the yellow wire tie and the green wire ties. The green is for the tail section, the yellow is for the front end and the engine section. I also want to make sure I avoid my throttle cable as well. I want it to look as clean as possible in the engine bay. So the first thing we're going to do is clip those zip ties that are holding those bundles together and just start feeding wire in the directions they need to go. Don't worry about getting them completely organized. It's just a matter of getting it laid out first, and then getting it organized and start working on the connectors one by one. So this should make it easier, just kind of breaking it up into sections. Time to start pulling wire.